let's get started.
My name is Max Lemke.
I'm just going to be listening to this.
Oh, okay.
I don't need your input. Let's see. So, where do you live in the 70s?
I lived in the beginning of the 70s, 70, 71, 72, in Long Beach, California. Lived in Humboldt County, Arcata, from 72 through 76, and then 76 through 78 in St. Louis, Missouri, and then in 78 moved to Hayward, California.
All right. So, you lived in a lot of California, more towards the coast,
Yes.
the southern part.
Yes.
How would you describe, I guess, that part of California politically?
At that time, it was very conservative, especially Orange County was very conservative. Los Angeles County, not so much. More moderate.
In Missouri?
Missouri, conservative.
Mm-hmm.
Bay Area was liberal.
All right. And how old were you back then?
So I was born in 52, so 1970 I turned 18, and in 1979 I turned 27.
Cool. What were some big events for you, I guess, back then?
What happened then?
In that decade.
In that decade.
What stood out for you?
In terms of my own life, or in terms of the world history?
Actually, we'll move back to that later.
Okay.
Okay, so you lived in a very conservative area,
Yes.
right? Mm.
Did I reflect that?
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I voted for Richard Nixon. That was the first time I was able to vote in 72.
All right. And was your whole family?
My dad was Republican, my mom was Democrat.
Okay. Oh yeah, so what were some...
And I changed.
Change.
So the whole Watergate thing with Richard Nixon, it had such a negative impact on me as far as the politics of the Conservative Party.
Mm-hmm.
That they would be so underhanded in the way that they went about, dirty tricks in politics. It was just, they went too far. Mm-hmm. And after that, I was disaffected with the conservative movement and have been moderate to liberal ever since.
What kind of music did you and your family listen to?
My dad listened from Nebraska. There was a show called the Polka Parade that played on radio station KFI, which was broadcast 50,000 watts because of its place on the frequency. It reached all throughout the Southwest, especially at night. And my dad always listened to the Polka Parade. We'd listen to the Dodgers baseball games. Vin Scully was announcer then, and this is his last year as announcer. Now, like 40 years later.
What kind of music did you listen to?
I listened top 30, top 40.
Yeah.
There's 3 stations in LA that played those. Listened to Casey Kasem,
Right.
Wolfman Jack. There was American Bandstand. Dick Clark was on at that time. That was the Motown music. Surfer, the Beach Boys, Jan and Dean were big, but then the Beatles came in, the Rolling Stones. I liked the Dave Clark Five, who folded pretty quickly after they But there was Simon and Garfunkel, Peter, Paul, and Mary. Just all the classic people back then. Yeah.
Which one did you like the most?
I listened to all of it.
Yeah.
And
I mean, like, what would you say your music reflected
so
your conservative
you know,
values?
I didn't get to go to a lot of concerts. Even though there were concerts there in LA a lot. There was one I went to, and I can't remember the name of the group now. I'll have to think about that. I'll probably come back to that later when I remember who it was. But it was a well-known group at the time, and it was pretty. Most of it was pretty innocent.
Right.
Coming out of the 50s, things were very, very conservative.
Yeah.
50s and the 60s and the 70s, even though, you know, it was sex, drugs, rock and roll. Most of us were very conservative, and most of the friends that I went to school with went to church.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway.
So, did your friends do drugs?
No.
Did you do drugs?
No.
You went to church?
Went to church. Went to seminary.
Yeah.
In St. Louis, I was going to seminary.
That's cool.
Lutheran seminary.
What is seminary?
That is, after you get your bachelor's degree, then you go to, it's a master's program. It's a 4-year program, and to become trained and then ordained as a pastor in a church. So, and it's basic for most of the mainline churches in the United States.
So, back in the 70s, right, the political climate was rapidly changing in the world, as well as in America, right? But a really big thing was the communist scare, right, the Red Scare, and there was, you know, McCarthyism,
Right.
and the Vietnam War,
Right.
and I was wondering what was
It was very real. When I was
Yeah.
in the 50s and early 60s, we were very much afraid. We were afraid of Russia. And we would have regular drills. The teacher would say drop, and it would be in case we would be bombed with a nuclear, or actually atomic, yeah, probably atomic or nuclear, I'm not sure which, bomb from Russia. And I remember this was before jets. There would be high altitude propeller airplanes, and you could hear them coming from a long way away, and you'd hear them go past, and you'd just be wondering, well, did they drop a bomb?
Yeah.
Went over. So yeah, we were very much afraid from the 50s into the 60s and into the 70s. The communist threat was very big.
Okay. What was your stance on communist ideology?
So, in a way, I was sort of sympathetic to the idea of communism, in the sense that, you know, that the commune, that you share your community, and you know, it's larger than a family, and you work together, and you know, from those who can do and produce to those who need.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a part of me that was, you know, resonated with that. But the military side, Russia and China, that was a threat, and so it was two different ideas that were going there.
Yeah. Let's see. In America, right, there were a whole bunch of new drugs being introduced.
Oh yeah,
Right.
LSD
Yeah.
that was already from the 60s, and
But those were
marijuana, yeah.
more or less all banned, right?
Oh yeah, they were all illegal. Yeah.
More conventional drugs introduced, like the birth control pill. And I was wondering
Oh, how did that? Yeah.
what you thought about that.
Well, I thought it was good, because it avoided unwanted pregnancies.
Mm-hmm.
The society was changing at that time, and because society had been so closed about sex, there was sort of excitement about that
Yeah.
throughout the country.
Mm-hmm.
Excitement in both directions. One was, oh no, sex, that's terrible.
Yeah.
And on the other side, there was, oh, sex is wonderful. And
Yeah.
so, abortions were is just a terrible thing. And there were a lot of abortions that were backroom, hotel or whatever.
Yeah.
They were dangerous, and so to avoid that, also just an unwanted children that had to go into foster care to be adopted.
Yeah.
That's that's just not the way you want things to be.
Right.
And so birth control was a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
So birth control was a good idea. I mean, being against birth control back then was like a more conservative.
The Catholic
tradition.
Church was against it. Catholic
Exactly.
Church, yeah. And other people are against it because they were saying, well, you shouldn't be having sex anyway unless you're married and you're ready to have kids. So
Right.
there was sort of a sex is just for having kids kind of thing.
Okay.
And what's the fun in that?
Well,
So,
okay.
yeah.
And so you weren't Catholic.
I was Lutheran
You
Protestant.
were Lutheran.
Yeah.
And what was the Lutheran views on the birth control pill?
Birth control.
So like,
It was okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Civil rights was really big back then.
Mm-hmm.
They had really big things with Martin Luther King and the Birmingham
Right.
Freedom Marches.
Right.
And I suppose, like, maybe Southern California wasn't as affected.
They were. Oh, it was huge.
What was segregation like?
There was, so it was, yeah, there's a lot of things that go on.
Yeah.
So I was going to a high school, 67 to 70, I graduated in 70. 4,000 students, and we only had 2 or 3 black students in the whole. So I didn't know any black people. And so it was all sort of in theory. And, I felt sympathetic to the blacks, but, it's like, well, if I don't know any, how do I impact, what do I do,
Yeah.
And the black culture was very different from white culture. So, and I didn't have any way to get involved with that. So, and that reflects how that there were laws, that the place where we bought our house in 1953, when you bought your house, you signed something that said you were white.
Mhm.
Said that you would not sell the house to anyone who's black.
Right.
Okay, or actually it was, and black wasn't the term then, colored, I think,
Yeah.
was the term that was used at the time. So,
1 second. Maybe.
and in Southern California, there were areas, towns where blacks had moved in, and the housing values went down. And so, and that was the big fear, is if you would sell a house to a black person, they moved into a neighborhood, it would ruin the value of the house. This was a belief.
Mhm.
And ruin the value of the houses in the neighborhood. And so no one could sell to blacks because, then you'd be destroying the investment of everyone else. That was a belief. Later in the 70s, I think finally they said no, that you can't have agreements like that.
Right.
So when it was the Civil Rights Act, I'm not sure what year that was.
Mhm.
In LA, we had the Watts riots in 1964. This is before the 70s. And the blacks, it was very scary to go. I happened to be in Nebraska visiting my grandma at the time, but there were large areas of looting and burning in Watts and Compton and the poor areas of LA.
So you'd say you weren't really involved in the civil rights movement at all?
No, I wasn't involved. I did even seminary was very so Long Beach City College, where I went in the early 70s, very few blacks. I didn't know any blacks. There were a few that went to school there. I went to Humboldt State. No blacks there. Seminary, very Protestant Lutheran, no blacks. There's one black there. Nice guy. So, yeah.
So would you say you supported Martin Luther King?
Yeah, and it was more of a, you could see that there was some kind of inequality. I had no sense of what it was, what went on, because I wasn't around it. My dad did make racial comments at times. Right. He was in some ways a racist. But actually, it wasn't because of the race, but because of the culture and the practice. That sometimes if the blacks did not respect things. We went to a baseball game one time, and there were some black kids, that climbed over a fence to get into the baseball game. And my dad was, that's terrible. Well, okay. They're supposed to pay, well, maybe they didn't have money. So it was too bad. He was against mixed race marriages. He felt that was he felt that was a terrible thing too.
Why?
He just thought it was wrong. That the races shouldn't mix, and that was a big thing. There were laws against that in some states. Some states had laws against mixed race marriages. So.
So, okay. Would you say you supported him in like a sense of like the American ideal?
Because of the sense of
like freedom.
For equality of all people. And we could see, there was segregation. I was against segregation.
Okay.
But I had no idea how to make things work right.
Right.
And in a way, it's still working out. I've worked with so many blacks now over the years, and there's still a cultural difference. And I recognize that there's a cultural difference, and accept that, and someone who's black that is acting, culturally black, I know, I sort of like, okay, but we're working together and we're doing this. Sometimes they have a different way of looking at how to do things, or how you are taking, public transportation. But it's reflected out of their black experience, and so I go, well, okay, well then, I don't get into a disagreement. I just accept their perspective, and go ahead.
No, let's move on.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you first voted, you said you voted for Nixon?
Right.
He was running against Kennedy? No. Who was you running against?
Sure.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
That was, actually, Nixon ran twice.
Yeah.
That was after Kennedy.
After he ran against Kennedy. Okay. Well, that's fine. How politically active would you say you were back then?
Not terribly active.
Alright.
I've never been to a Democratic meeting.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever given any donations to a candidate.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Alright. I suppose that's it. Is there anything you'd like to say?
is there anything else I can help you with? 70s. It's a long time ago.
Yeah. So you went to seminary to become a preacher, right?
Yeah.
Does that mean you were like chaste?
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 No, so Catholics, they don't get married, right?
Right.
But, no, you can have girlfriends, you can date, you
Yeah.
can get married. I was married during that time. So, it's okay.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Welcome. I have to go back to work. Don't you have more questions?
Not unless you have anything to say.